Gentlemen, they say masculinity is strength, but true strength is not in domination, it's in devotion. It's in the quiet confidence of a man who takes time to learn a woman's language, not her words, but her breath, her pulse, her unspoken sighs. He doesn't chase validation through conquest, he builds connection through presence. He understands that pleasure isn't performance, it's communication. It's trust woven through touch. A man who honors a woman's body is not weak, he is awake. He listens with his hands, speaks through patience, and reads the rhythm of her heartbeat as if it were scripture. He knows that giving pleasure is not about proving himself. It's about awakening something divine within her, and in that awakening he finds his own reflection. Such a man carries quiet power. He leads not with ego, but with empathy. He leaves not a mark on her skin, but a memory in her soul. And when he walks away, she does not remember what he did. She remembers how he made her feel, safe, seen, sacred. Because the truth is, the man who learns to give, not to take, becomes unforgettable, not because of his body, but because of his energy. He becomes the man every woman feels, even in silence. A man's strength is shown through his ability to honor a woman's pleasure, to lead through empathy and attentiveness rather than control or ego. Physical intimacy becomes powerful when it's rooted in emotional connection and presence, when touch becomes language and desire becomes mutual respect. When a man gives without demand, he awakens something divine in both himself and his partner, creating intimacy that transcends the physical. True masculinity is devotion, not domination. It's not about how loud a man speaks or how much space he takes in a room. It's about the depth of his presence when he's with a woman, how softly he listens, how deeply he understands without needing to control. A man who embodies true masculinity doesn't conquer, he connects. He knows that to lead is not to overpower, but to guide with gentleness, to inspire trust, to bring safety where there once was hesitation. His energy isn't sharp or imposing, it's grounding, steady, and deliberate. It tells her without words that she can relax, that she doesn't have to defend herself, that she can simply be. Devotion begins where ego ends. The devoted man doesn't need to prove his worth by taking. He proves it by giving. He understands that power is not about being obeyed, but about being trusted. When he loves with presence. When he touches, he does it with reverence. When he speaks, his words are chosen with care, not to manipulate, but to nurture. His devotion isn't blind, it's conscious. It's an act of choosing, again and again, to be a man who creates emotional safety rather than chaos. A man whose strength is in restraint, not aggression. The man who embodies this kind of masculinity doesn't measure himself against other men. He doesn't need comparison because he is anchored in self-awareness. He understands that dominance may gain obedience for a moment, but devotion earns connection for a lifetime. His power is felt in the calm he brings to a woman's body and soul, in the stability of his presence, in the quiet assurance that he is not here to take from her, but to rise with her. He's not threatened by her strength, he's moved by it. He doesn't shrink from her emotions, he meets them with steady eyes and open hands. That is the kind of man whose energy lingers long after he's gone. To be devoted is to understand that intimacy is sacred, that trust is fragile, and that love requires protection. It is not a performance of masculinity, but a lived expression of it, a way of being that says, I am here, not to conquer you, but to honor you. Such a man does not equate devotion with submission. He knows devotion is strength, the strength to stay, to listen, to learn, to adapt. It takes far more courage to hold space for another's heart than to demand it. Devotion is the act of seeing a woman not as territory to be claimed, but as a universe to be explored with patience and awe. When a man stands in devotion, everything about him changes: his energy, his tone, his touch. His masculinity becomes magnetic because it's rooted in sincerity. He doesn't need to chase validation because his confidence is born from his capacity to give. His love becomes a safe space, not a battlefield. A woman in his presence feels unguarded, not because he disarms her, but because he allows her to be her full self without judgment. In that atmosphere, trust blooms naturally, passion deepens effortlessly. The connection becomes something neither of them needs to control, it flows. Domination can create fear, but devotion builds freedom. A man devoted to his partner doesn't chain her spirit, he frees it. He knows that love cannot thrive under control, that real intimacy cannot grow where there is fear. So, he chooses the path of softness, not weakness, but deliberate tenderness, the kind that makes a woman feel adored, respected, and understood. His devotion is his declaration that her pleasure, her peace, her heart matter as much as his own. He gives because he understands that in giving, he receives something far greater: trust, openness, emotional truth. That is true masculinity. The man who finds strength in empathy, who turns his attention into affection, whose leadership is defined by love. He is not afraid of vulnerability because he knows it's where real power begins. His masculinity isn't loud. It's quiet and felt like a heartbeat steady beneath the surface, holding everything together. Devotion for him isn't an act, it's a way of living, a language of love that needs no translation. Pleasure is a form of communication. It's a dialogue spoken without words, where the body becomes the language and energy becomes the message. When two people connect through pleasure, they are not just engaging in physical contact, they are speaking in a deeper, more intuitive tongue. Every breath, every touch, every pause becomes a sentence. It's how one soul tells another, I see you, I feel you, I'm here with you. The beauty of this kind of communication is that it requires honesty, not performance. It asks both people to be fully present, to listen not with their ears but with their senses, to respond not with logic but with instinct. When pleasure is authentic, it's never one-sided. It flows like a conversation where both partners are attuned to the rhythm of each other's responses. A man who understands this knows that pleasure is not something to be taken. It's something to be exchanged. He listens to her body as he would to a melody, noticing how it rises and falls, when it opens, when it retreats. Her breath becomes feedback, her movement becomes truth, and he learns that the art of giving is also the art of hearing, because pleasure reveals more than words ever could. In this kind of communication, silence speaks. The stillness between moments holds meaning. When she closes her eyes, when her body trembles slightly under his touch, she's saying something no language could capture. And when he slows down to meet her there, he's answering her in the only way that matters, through awareness. Pleasure becomes sacred when it's built on this understanding that it's not about control, it's about connection. It's not about what's done, but how it's felt. Too often, people mistake pleasure for indulgence, as if it's something shallow or selfish. But when done with intention, pleasure becomes a mirror of emotion. It reflects how two people trust, how they surrender, how they give. It's the emotional truth written across the skin, a translation of feeling into sensation. Through it, we reveal the parts of ourselves we keep hidden in conversation: vulnerability, longing, gratitude, tenderness. Every touch becomes an act of truth-telling. Every sigh becomes a confession. The body doesn't lie. It can't pretend pleasure. That's why it's such a pure form of communication. It exposes what words conceal. You can't fake presence, you can't simulate emotional safety. When a woman feels truly desired, her body speaks it. When a man feels truly connected, his energy shows it. This is why the most powerful form of intimacy isn't about intensity. It's about awareness. It's about two people who are willing to feel each other beyond the surface, who understand that every small reaction is an answer, every shift in rhythm a response. Pleasure is also a teacher. It shows where walls still exist, where fear still lingers, where trust hasn't yet bloomed. It reveals whether someone can receive love or only give it. It shows whether they can surrender to the moment or if they are still fighting to stay in control. When approached with care, pleasure becomes healing, a way to speak to old wounds through tenderness. The touch becomes reassurance. The rhythm becomes forgiveness. In those moments, bodies stop being separate. They become languages that understand each other instinctively. A man who knows this doesn't seek pleasure for validation. He seeks it for connection. He understands that when a woman allows him close enough to feel her pleasure, she's trusting him with something sacred. He knows that pleasure isn't an act. It's an exchange of energy, an unspoken agreement that says, I trust you enough to let go. And in honoring that, he speaks fluently in the language of care. He learns to touch not just to excite, but to express, not just to please, but to understand. Pleasure communicates what words can never quite reach, a kind of truth that lives in sensation. It's how two people remind each other that they are human, that they are seen, that they are worthy of tenderness. It's the language of presence, of love made visible through the body. And when spoken with intention, it becomes more than desire. It becomes devotion, an ongoing conversation between souls who know that the truest form of communication isn't spoken. It's felt. Giving elevates both souls. It transforms the act of intimacy from something physical into something deeply spiritual. When a man gives with genuine intention, not to prove, not to please, but to connect, he becomes a vessel for something higher than desire. His giving stops being about transaction and becomes about transcendence. The moment he stops asking what he can get and begins asking what he can give, everything shifts. Energy flows differently. The space between two bodies becomes charged with meaning. His touch stops being an action and becomes an offering. In that space, giving becomes sacred. It's no longer a gesture of service, but an expression of reverence. When he gives, he's saying, I see you. I want you to feel safe here, cherished here, free here. And in that giving, he doesn't lose power, he gains depth. He becomes more connected to his own humanity, because the act of giving without demand awakens something ancient inside him, something that understands that love is not ownership, it's recognition. He begins to understand that to give is to align with life itself, because life, at its essence, is about flow, the constant circulation of energy, affection, trust, and care. The man who gives with awareness elevates himself in the process. His generosity deepens his emotional intelligence. His presence sharpens. He learns that giving is not weakness. It is power refined by grace. He discovers that when he brings pleasure, peace, or joy to another, he feels more whole himself. His confidence no longer comes from how much he can take, but from how much beauty he can create. And in that creation, he finds purpose. The act of giving becomes his quiet rebellion against ego. It's where his masculinity matures into something timeless, not driven by conquest, but by contribution. For the woman who receives such giving, something within her expands. Her walls soften, her energy opens, and she feels seen in a way words could never describe. She feels valued for her essence, not just her body. That kind of giving doesn't just touch her, it restores her. It tells her she can trust again, she can breathe again, she can let go of the tension she's learned to hold. Her receiving is not passive, it's reciprocal. When she receives deeply, she gives something back not out of obligation, but through resonance. Her openness becomes her gift in return, her surrender an unspoken thank you. And this is where giving elevates both souls, because in giving, he awakens her softness, and in her softness, she mirrors his strength back to him. The circle completes itself. He gives, she receives, and the energy returns magnified. It becomes a shared elevation, a quiet ascent towards something divine. Two people who understand this no longer see intimacy as a series of actions, but as a sacred exchange of energy that heals, renews, and transforms. Their connection stops being about pleasure alone and becomes about presence, about the feeling of being fully alive in each other's energy. True giving has no performance in it. It doesn't seek applause or gratitude. It's not about perfection, it's about sincerity. A man who gives with heart doesn't measure the outcome. He doesn't wait for validation. He gives because it feels right in his spirit, because giving aligns him with truth. And what's beautiful is that the more he gives, the more he receives, not in return from her necessarily, but from within himself. He receives peace, grounding, and an unshakable sense of wholeness. There is something magnetic about that kind of man. His energy feels abundant, not demanding. His love feels liberating, not consuming. He becomes the kind of presence that uplifts anyone who comes near him because his giving energy flows beyond intimacy. It becomes who he is. He gives with his words, his patience, his listening, his understanding. He becomes the kind of soul who nourishes others simply by existing in alignment with generosity. Giving, at its core, is not a sacrifice, it's expansion. It's how two souls grow toward each other and towards something higher. When he gives, he rises. When she receives, she blooms. Together, they create a harmony that neither could reach alone. In that exchange, both are changed softer, wiser, fuller. That is the quiet miracle of giving. It doesn't deplete, it completes. It turns intimacy into art, and love into elevation.